Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Genius Knowledge Point, your go-to place for practical programming solutions for diploma, computer and IT students. If you are stuck on any practical assignment or just want to learn how to solve programs step by step, then you are in the right place. The main purpose of making this video is to provide practical knowledge to all diploma students so that they can develop their own programs which will be helpful for their future. In this video, we are going to see the practical number 7 of object-oriented programming, that is for Diploma, Computer and IT, 3rd semester and for case scheme. So the practical number 7 is write a program to implement friend function using two different classes external function. So in this practical, we have to include a friend function inside our program. So that will be the main concept behind this practical. So before going to the actual practical or actual question, we will see what is friend function. So just we have to clear the concept of friend function. So suppose you have a class that is having some class name, and inside that class we have member variables as var1 or var2 and member functions as function1 and function2. So these var1 and var2, var1, var2 and function1 and function2, these are the members of that class. So the class can access them directly, even though the functions are members of the class. So these functions can access this var1 and var2 directly because all the four members are there inside the class. So they can directly access each other. But if there is one more function that is outside the class, like suppose it is a function 3 and I want that function to use or to access the variables inside this class, so which is not possible as this function is outside the class. So this function cannot directly access var1, var2 or function1, function2 because it is not a member of this class. So as it is a non-member, it cannot access the class members directly. For that purpose, what we can do, there is a provision of creating friend functions. So what the function will do, we have to declare this function 3 as a friend of this class. So inside the class definition, we have to declare this function 3 as a friend function. We have to use a friend keyword behind this function 3 declaration. What will happen? The compiler will understand that this function 3 is the friend of this class. So this function can access the var1, var2, function1 and function2. That is the members of this class. So whenever the function is declared as a friend function inside the class, that function can access the class's private members and protected members directly. So that is the concept of friend function. So this is what we have to do in this practical. Let us move to the question 1. Write a C++ program to exchange the values of two variables using friend function. So we have to create a class and we have to take some value inside that class and we have to exchange those variables using friend function. So that is the main concept in this question. So let us see what we can do practically. So we have to declare a class number. So I am assuming that class name as a number. Then inside that number class, I am taking one variable as val. So the val will be the actual number, that is the storing. Then the member functions I am creating accept and display, and one more function I am creating as a friend function, that is a swap. So as we are exchanging the values, so I am using the function as a swap. So that function will be exchanging the values. So and inside main function we have to call those functions. So let us move to the coding part of this program. So initially we have to include the header files, that is iostream.h and conio.h. Then after that I am defining a class. So class is the keyword, number is the class name. Inside that I am declaring a private variable, that is int value. So this is the variable that is storing actual number. So this number will be storing my value. Then after that I am opening a public access specifier. I am defining some functions, that is accept function is to accept the value that is entered by the user, and I am creating this function as a parameterized function, accepting one integer parameter inside it, and that value is copied into value variable. So this is the accept function, and similarly the display function is there. It is printing the value whichever is present inside this value variable. So that is the printing part. And as we have seen, we have to declare one more friend function. So this is the declaration of friend function. So this is the function declaration part, and before that I am attaching a friend keyword. So it defines that this function is a friend of this class. So how I have declared it? Friend, in the return type, that is void, then function name swap. Inside that I am passing two parameters. First parameter is object of num1, and I am not directly passing the object, I am passing address. That's why number, this is the class name, then num1, this is the variable name, and before that I am attaching ampersand sign. So when ampersand sign is used, when we want to pass the address of particular object, so in that case we are passing ampersand sign. So I am passing address of num1. So num1 is the variable, it is passed as a parameter here. Similarly, number space ampersand num2, this is the second parameter, and it is passed as address of that object. So this is how we have created the friend function here. We have declared the friend function here. So the class has closed with curly bracket and semicolon. So the class is complete. Now the time is to create the friend function. So when we are defining the friend function, we don't have to put friend keyword before that. So we will just put from void and function name. So void swap, inside the bracket the parameters as it is, number space ampersand num1 comma number space ampersand num2. So why I am using the addresses of object? Because the program is having swapping capabilities. So whenever we want to swap something or swap two different numbers or two different objects, we don't pass the values directly. So we use the call by reference method here. So that's why the addresses are passed. So this is the call by reference method. So basically, if you have seen in the C programming, there are two different methods for passing the parameters to the function. So first one is call by value method, and second one is call by reference method. So here I am passing the call by reference. So this is how the swapping will be done. So inside the swap function, I am taking one temporary integer, that is int temp is equal to num1 dot value. So whatever the value is inside first parameter, that value will be stored into temp variable. Then num1 dot value is equal to num2 dot value. So the value from num2 parameter, that is second parameter, will be stored into first parameter's value variable. And finally num2 dot value is equal to temp. So finally the value which is stored in the temporary variable, that will be copied into second parameter's variable, that is value variable. This is how we have swapped the numbers using a temporary third variable, and we have exchanged the values using that third variable. So we have taken the third variable, we have stored the first value inside the third variable, then second value into first variable, and the temporary variable's value into second value. This is how the swapping is done. You may have already known this. So next, your swap function is done. So final task is to create a main function. So inside main, it is declared as int main. Inside main, I have taken two integer variables, that is val1 and val2, because we will be accepting those values and passing those parameters to the number class. So I am entering a message, enter the first value, accepting it inside val1, same for val2. So both the two numbers are accepted. Then I am creating object of number class, that is number space num1 comma num2. So I have created two objects of number class, that is num1 and num2. Why I have created two objects? Because for swap function we need two addresses of the two objects. So that's why we have to create two objects. So I'm calling the accept function for num1. So what will happen? Whatever the value is inside val1, that will be stored inside num1's value variable. So for num1, value will be stored as val1, that is the first number we have entered. Similarly for num2, I am running the accept function here also. So num2 dot accept, and inside bracket I am passing val2, that is the second value we have entered. So both the values are accepted and gone to their respective objects, that is num1 and num2. So now we have to call the swap function. So how I am calling it? Swap, inside bracket I am passing first object as a first parameter and second object as second parameter. So what will happen at this stage? At this step what will happen? The num1's value will be passed here. So inside the num1's address part. Similarly for num2's value will be passed here as an address. So instead of copying actual values, we are passing the addresses here, because we want the swapping operation inside num1 and num2 only. We don't want that operation on their copies. So if you use the call by value method, so what will happen? The num1 and num2's copy will be sent here, and the swapping will happen on those copies. The actual numbers will be as it is. So even if the swap function is called here, the exchange will not happen. So the numbers will be as it is. So that's why we have to pass the addresses. So the actual objects will be passed here and their swapping will be done. So this is how we are doing the swapping part using the call by reference method. So finally the swapping is done here in this statement. So finally I am putting a message values after swapping, that is the simple message. Then cout num1, that is I am displaying the num1 and calling the num1.display function. So what will happen? The value inside num1 will be displayed here. So whatever the value is stored inside num1's value variable, that will be displayed in this statement. Similarly I am displaying the num2 and num2.display is called. So what will happen? The value inside num2 variable will be displayed here. So if you see the output, the numbers will be swapped here. And if you use the call by reference method, that is if you remove these ampersand symbols, so what will happen? The call by value will be called here and the swapping will be done on those copies only. So actual numbers will be as it is. So this is the difference between call by value and call by reference. And whenever you are doing the exchange part or swapping two numbers, always you have to remember that you have to use the call by reference method. Otherwise the swapping will not happen on the actual numbers, it will happen on their copies. So this is how the display function is called. So both the numbers will be displayed here. getch is there to display the output screen, and finally return 0 to end the main function. So this is how the program has ended. I'm copying it all, going to compiler, pasting it here, going to debug and running the program. So it is asking me to enter the first value, so I am just putting some value here. Then it is asking me to enter second value, so I have entered the second number, and after pressing enter it has run the swapping part, that is the swap function has run here. And if you see the output values after swapping, num1 is displayed as 56, that is it has taken the second value, and num2 is displayed as 23, that is it has taken the first value. Those numbers are swapped here using the swap function, and we have used friend function here. So this is how we have completed the first question. Now the next question is write a program to create two classes, test1 and test2, which stores marks of student, read values for class objects, and calculate average of two tests using friend function. So let us understand what is needed to develop this program. From question what we have understood, let us see that. So we have to create two classes, that is test1 and test2. So already it is given inside the question that we have to create two classes, otherwise we can do this in using single class also, but as the question is given we will follow that. So first we have to create a class test1. So inside that the variable will be mark1, so that will be the mark of first test. Then the function will be accept, to accept the marks of that particular test. Similarly, we will be creating a second class, that is class test2. Then for that class we will be creating variable mark2, and again the same function, that is accept, to accept the marks for second test. Then as the question is given, we have to calculate the average of two tests using friend function. So we have to calculate the average of mark 1 and mark 2. So for that purpose we have to create one more function, and that will be the common function. So that's why we have to create that function as a friend function, and that will be the average function. So that function will be calculating the average of these 2 marks. So that will be the friend function, and that friend function will be inside both the classes. Then only the both classes can understand that the function is our friend function. So that will be the structure. Then in main function we have to create an object of both the classes. Then we will accept the marks of both the test, and we will call the friend function. So this is how the structure will be for this program. Let us move to the coding part directly. So initially you will need 2 header files, that is iostream.h, conio.h. Then I am declaring a class test2. So why I am declaring it here, that we will see in later. So then I am starting the definition of second class, that is test1. So class test1, this is the definition of class test1. Then inside that I am declaring a private variable, that is int marks. So that will be the marks for test1. Then inside public section I am creating a friend function, that is friend float average. So this is the return type of this function. Why we are taking float return type? Because the average will be having floating point number. So that's why the return type will be float, and average is the function name, and inside that we have to pass the test1 and test2 objects. So then only we can perform the average operation on those 2 objects. So that's why we have taken test t1. This is the first object, that is the parameter passed as object, and similarly comma test2 t2 object. So that is the again second parameter is passed as a test2 object. So these are the both parameters here. And after that I am declaring one more function, that is void set marks. You can call it as accept also. So void set marks. Then inside that I am passing one parameter. So this function is to accept the marks and store that marks into marks1 variable. So this is the accept function. You can call it accept also. So I am just calling it accept. So as we have defined in the structure, so consider it as accept function. So accept function is accepting one parameter, it is taking the value and storing it inside the marks variable. So the accept function is closed, class is closed with semicolon. So next, the definition of class test2. So before that, if you see the friend function, it is having float average test t1 and test2 t2. So if you see, there is a variable of test2 we have called here, that is we have passed as a parameter. So if you see the code, it is taking test2 variable which is not defined already. So that's why we have taken this statement. So this is called forward declaration. So what we have done, as we are going to use test2 object here, so before that we have to declare that somewhere inside the program. Then only the compiler will understand that the test2 variable is there inside your program. So that's why this forward declaration is there. Next we will move to the next part, that is definition of class test2. So the same part is defined here. We have taken the private section, inside that taken the marks2 variable, and again the same friend function is there, that is the declaration of function with friend keyword. Why we have taken in both the classes the friend function? Because it is a friend of both the classes, because we are taking the test marks from both the classes. So that's why we have to declare it inside both the classes. So the public section is there, then the same accept function is used here, that is it is accepting the second test marks and storing the value inside marks variable. So both the classes are done here. Now as we have declared the friend function, we have to define it. So I am defining the friend function outside both the classes. So that is float, that is the return type as we have done here. Then name of the function, that is average, then set of parameters as it is. So test1 t1, test2 t2. So these are the objects of two classes as a parameters. So inside that I am just returning a value. So if you see, this is the numerator part. So inside numerator I am taking the t1 marks, that is t1 dot marks 1 plus t2 dot marks 2, that is the marks of test 1 plus marks of test 2. So that will be the numerator part, that is the addition of that both the marks, and that part is divided by 2.0. So this is typecasting, using implicit typecasting. So whenever we are dividing integer by float, so the answer will be float value, and that will be returned as a float number. So the return type is matching float and returning the float value here. So the function is complete, which is returning a float value, which is the average of both the two marks. So the friend function is done. Now we will move to the main function. So int main, inside that we have to accept the two numbers, that is, for that I am declaring two variables, that is int m1 comma m2. After that, putting a message, enter the marks for test1. So those marks will be accepted inside m1 variable. Similarly, the marks for test2 will be accepted for inside m2 variable. So both the marks are accepted. Now we have to create two objects of two classes. So test1 and test1, this is the object name and this is the class name. So I am creating one object of test1 and calling the set marks method. So we have to change the name here, because we have changed the name in the class. So set marks will be replaced by accept method. So we are calling the accept method and passing m1 as parameter. So whatever the marks entered for test1, that will be passed here, and that will go inside test1's marks 1. Similarly, we are creating an object of test2 class, that is test2, and calling the accept method again. So there is a spelling mistake, accept method again. So what will happen? The second marks will be gone to test2's marks 2. So both the marks are accepted. Now I am calling average function. So before that we have to store that average inside some float variable. So that's why taking float, this is the data type, avg is the variable name, that is the average variable name, is equal to calling friend function. Here I am calling the friend function. So average, and inside that passing two objects. So these two objects will be passed to these t1 and t2. So their values will be copied in t1 and t2. And for t1 and t2 we have calculated the average. The same average will be calculated for test1 and test2 objects. So the calculation of this average will be float value, that is stored inside float avg variable. So our average is ready. So we can just print the output message as cout. The average of two tests is, then attaching avg variable. So the average will be displayed here. And finally ending with endl, get ch is there to hold the output screen, and finally return 0 is there, as the main function is having integer return type. So the main function is ended here. So just selecting all, copying it, going to compiler, taking a new file, pasting all the code here, going to debug and running the program. So if you run the program, you will see enter the marks for test1. So it is asking me to enter some marks. I am entering 80 here. Then enter the marks for test2, entering 75 here. If you see, the average is calculated. The average of the two tests is 77.5, which is a float number, because we have used implicit typecasting here, and we have done it using friend function. So 80 will go to the test1 marks, then 75 will go to the second object, that is test2 marks, and both the objects are called inside friend function as a parameters, and using those parameters we have calculated the average, and that average is displayed here. So this is how we have completed the first question of practical related questions. Now moving to the next question, that is write a program to declare class, calculation, display addition, subtraction, multiplication and division of two numbers using friend function. So it is similar to the previous question, that is again we have to use the friend function, and inside that we have to declare one class, that is calculation, and we have to do all these mathematical operations on two numbers. So if you see the structure of this program, we have to create a class, that is calculation, then these are the functions that we have to design, and we have to call those functions inside main function, and all these functions will be friend functions. So let us move to the coding part directly. So initially we have included the header files, that is iostream.h and conio.h. Then after that I'm starting the class definition, that is class number. This is the class name. And after that, inside private declaration I am creating two integer variables, that is n1 and n2, as we have to calculate these multiple functions for the two numbers. So we have to take two numbers as the variables. Then after that, in the public section I am taking all the functions as addition, subtraction, multiply, divide. So these are all the functions that will be the operations on these two numbers n1 and n2, and all these functions are declared as friend functions. So for that purpose, the friend keyword is attached in front of every function. So the declaration part is done for friend function. Next, the class is closed. Then after that, we have to define all these functions which we have designed for the two operations. So for that purpose, I have designed them. So first function is int add, so that is the return type, function name, and as we have declared inside the friend function, that is we have passed two parameters. So the two parameters are passed here, int n1 and n2. Similarly, the other functions are defined, and what I am returning in that, return n1 plus n2. So the parameters passed, those parameters will be taken here in the n1 and n2, their addition will be done, and that addition will be returned here. So that is the output of add function. Similarly, for subtract function, the subtraction will be the output. Same function definition is there, just the sign is changed as a minus sign. So the subtraction will happen here and it will be returned as the function output. Similarly, for multiplication, the multiplication will happen and it will be returned. Similarly, for divide, but the return type will be different for divide function because it may have fractional part. So for that purpose, it is returning a float point value. So float, divide, then two parameters are there, returning n1 divided by n2. This is the calculation part, and that calculation is converted into float value using typecasting here. So this is called a explicit typecasting. So the output will be the float value and that will be returned as an output for divide function. So all the function definitions are complete. Next, move to the main function, that is int main. Inside that I am taking two numbers, that is int num1 comma num2. These two variables are accepted from the user and those values will be passed to the class. So I am taking num1 num2, then creating object of number class that we have created above. So this is the object of number class. Entering a message, enter the number 1, that is accepted in num1. Entering second message, that is enter number 2, and accepting inside num2 variable. So both the values are accepted. Now I am directly calling the function, that is add num1 comma num2, then subtract num1 comma num2. So whatever the values are present inside this num1 and num2, that will be passed to these functions as a parameter and their definition will be run. So for add function, what will happen, num1 and num2 will be copied inside n1 and n2, and those numbers will be added here and their addition will be returned. So this is the output of return value. So the addition will be returned here and that will be attached in front of addition message. This is how the addition will be displayed. Similarly, other functions are designed. So here we will see the subtraction of two numbers, that is the output will be subtraction of num1 and num2. Similarly, multiplication will be displayed here and division will display here. So all the functions are called, and as the function is friend function, we don't have to call it using object. So even if you created this object, you can skip this part because this is not used anywhere. So you can skip this object part. So finally all the functions are displayed, the outputs are displayed, and the get ch is there to hold the output screen, and return 0 is there to close the main function. So coding is complete. Selecting all, copying it, going to compiler, pasting it there, going to debug and running it. It is asking me to enter number 1. So I am just entering some number, is 20. entering number 2, entering as 30. If you see, the addition is printed as 50, subtraction as minus 10, because second number is the greater one. Multiplication is printed and division is also printed. Division, you can see it is printed in the floating point format. So it has typecasted our output, and the output is written in the floating value. So this is how we have completed the practical. And if you see, you have to take care of this second number, because if you take the second number as 0, then the division with 0 will happen, and that we don't want. So that will generate a mathematical error. So that's why you have to take the second number as positive number or any other number than 0. So this is how the question is complete, and the practical number 7 is also complete, which is regarding the friend function. So that's it for today's practical. I hope this helped you understand the solution clearly. Code for this practical is available at the link given in the description. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel for more such diploma level programming solutions. If you have any doubts or need solutions for other programs, drop a comment below. I will be happy to help. And hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching and happy coding.